I'm joined now by Charlie Sykes, MSNBC contributor and longtime conservative commentator and NPR TV critic, and MSNBC contributor Eric Deggans. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Charlie, first to you. What do you make of the reciprocal anger from Trump, the White House, and conservatives towards Samantha Bee?
Well, first of all, I mean, we live in this era of whataboutism, and it's almost that we are in a downward spiral of incivility. I think it's very, very revealing that after this textbook case of racism that we got from Roseanne Barr, that the response from the White House, of course, was not to express outrage or concern, but simply to say, well, what about this liberal comedian, who, by the way, also crossed the line, and it was also, by the way, since we're talking about comedians, grossly unfunny. This is part of the problem. But I think, this is what you get, the degraded political culture and dialogue that we're getting, that you do have these dueling hypocrisies. And by the way, how incredibly hypocritical is it for the Trump White House? We were talking about the Trump White House expressing indignation and outrage over sexist slurs. I think you probably, Katie, you probably saw that particular C word displayed at Trump rallies that you covered throughout 2016. So there's a little bit of fake posturing going on.
You know,
here.
I did. And here's the thing about that word. While I have never heard Donald Trump say it, he did call Ted Cruz the P word on stage, and he said Hillary Clinton was schlonged by Obama. He's got a long history of saying these things. But when it comes particularly to, or specifically to that word, I never saw the president call out anybody in any of his crowds and say to that person, hey, this is too far. This is not OK. You can't do it. He almost condoned it. He certainly capitalized on that sort of anger and behavior in order to propel himself to the White House. Eric, what do you think? Why hasn't the White House come out, though, and tried to take if they want to take a moral stand against Samantha Bee, should they have taken one with Roseanne Barr first?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a White House that goes after the people that they feel are attacking them, and they viewed Roseanne as an ally, and that's why they haven't spoken out against her. But I think it's a mistake to focus too much on who used what word when. Samantha Bee has admitted that she made a mistake in using that word, and I think she did. But I think what is important is you have to look at a broadcaster or a performer's history. Do they have a history of using sexist language, of demeaning women, of saying things that are racist or homophobic or Islamophobic? And in Roseanne Barr's case, she had a history of saying things on social media that were in a similar vein. She had compared former Obama aide Susan Rice, also another black woman, to an ape. She had said disturbing things about Islam, and she'd also retweeted conspiracy theories. So I don't think you can compare the two cases simply because Samantha Bee admitted that she crossed the line. But when you look at her history, her reports and her comedy have been about looking out for women's issues, about highlighting when women are oppressed or when women are held back. And she crossed the line in using this word, and she has apologized for it. So I think these two things are very different.
Are we perhaps in peril of going down a slippery slope if we continue to demand apologies from comedians? Comedians, I mean, their job is to push the envelope. Not to say that this is pushing the envelope, but
I think the real problem that we have here is we're focusing on the wrong issues. It's not so much about the use of an individual word. In the case of Roseanne Barr and what she did, it's about echoing a trope of stereotyping, comparing black people to apes that we have been dealing with for hundreds of years, and that it's been wrapped inside a lot of our media for many years. And so trying to eradicate that systemic prejudice, trying to get people to understand that comparing black people to apes echoes a prejudice that has been used to hold people back for hundreds of years, that's a much different thing than a comedian using a word that crosses the line. And I think some people are trying to conflate these things because they don't want to have that discussion about systemic prejudice. They don't want to have that discussion about when a performer says something that reflects a wider problem in society. I don't think anyone thinks that that Samantha Bee was trying to reach out to sexists in the audience by using that word. And so we are talking about two different things here. I think the effort to conflate them is an effort to make Roseanne look like she was just cracking an off-color joke rather than doing something that was much more damaging.
Charlie, I'm old enough to remember when Donald Trump ran on being politically incorrect and ran against those who were clutching their pearls at everything.
Well, exactly. And of course, he in fact has, created an environment in which people feel that they can push these lines. I mean, go back and look, by the way, at the Twitter feed of Dinesh D'Souza, who just got the pardon, the kinds of things that he said, referring to Barack Obama as, a boy out of the ghetto and things like that. But, going to this point of the danger of having a double standard. Look, they're not equivalent. I'm not arguing that they are equivalent. The Trump White House, I think, is very cynically using Samantha Bee in order to take attention away from the racism of somebody who was touted by the President of the United States. But on the other hand, isn't this kind of a moment to realize that, if you want to have a higher moral, standard here, if you want to have the higher ground, then don't find a way to excuse vulgar sexist language, as opposed to vulgar racist language. And I'm not saying that they are equivalent, because I don't think they are. But I do think that there's a real danger for people falling into kind of this double standard. And by the way, it's hypocrisy Olympics all the way around here.
Let's also remind people that Samantha Bee was talking very specifically about a Trump policy that was just enacted at the border, ripping families apart. And here's what her statement about that says today. The White House's war on the full frontal host, however, risks calling more public attention to the, you know what, that's not the right one. I'm sorry. Right here. We spent the day wrestling with the repercussions of one bad word when we all should have spent the day incensed that as a nation, we are wrenching children from their parents and treating people legally seeking asylum as criminals. Charlie, doesn't she have a point?
Well, yes, but that in some ways indicts her use of the word, because it is legitimate to talk about what's happening to children on the border, this policy of the new cruelty. And had, in fact, she not used that word, maybe we would be talking about that. See, this is where you undermine, you blow yourself up, you make yourself less persuasive.
Yeah.
And again, comedians, first of all, should be funny. If she wants to be an activist, she should try to actually advance the cause rather than provide this kind of a distraction for the cause.
I got to say,
the Trump administration, of course, has now seized upon this, that we're not talking about why did the President of the United States, why did a major network promote someone who, a vile racist like Roseanne Barr. And by the way, this was completely predictable. But instead of that, we are talking about the whataboutism, and that's self-inflicted. You know what?
And I got to say, the Samantha Bee word blew that immigration story out of my rundown the other day. So, but don't worry, we're going to be talking about it. We're getting it back in. I promise. It's important. Charlie Sykes, Eric Deggans, thank you very much.